Alright, this video is for anyone who wants to use the RC4 wheel drive K44 axles. This is a machined axle. The only difference between the machined and the cast in terms of whether this will work or not is that the cast has the pumpkin on the passenger side, machine has the pumpkin on the driver's side. So the problem I was having, this is an SCX10.2 chassis, and the panhard is backwards basically between the K44 axle and the AR44 SCX10.2 setup. So you're probably used to seeing, you know, the panhard mount being over here on an SCX10.2, and it mounts up to the extension from the shock tower. You can see I've cut that part off on this piece. So there were a couple of things I had to do here. The first trick was to get a dual servo mount. This I just ordered from Shapeways. I can't remember the manufacturer, but if you just go on Shapeways and search for dual servo SCX10.2 mount, you should be able to find it. That way you can mount the servo on the passenger side, and you'll have enough room to make a long enough steering link there. And the panhard was the other issue. There's a panhard mount. This is actually a little bit loose here. Let me tighten it down. You can get a AR or a K44 panhard setup. I think they actually advertise it as for the Grande 2. And it comes with this little, it's hard to see, but right where the panhard mounts on there, it's a little piece that goes on top of the link mount. There's a little link mount that goes on top of the axle right here, and then this piece is actually part of it. It's actually machined into it. So that comes with the Grande 2. I think they call it the 3-link CMS setup or 3-link panhard setup, something like that. And that kit also comes with this little piece, which is designed to be mounted on the Grande, or I assume the Trailfinder 2 chassis. And I found that what you can do is you can actually use it on the SCX10.2. Here I've mounted it on the outside of the passenger shock tower with a little spacer. I think this is a 4mm spacer, maybe 3mm. And I had to drill another hole in the chassis so that I could mount that second screw there. Otherwise, it kind of, you know, it's not very stable, especially since this 3D printed material doesn't really hold screws in very well. So it's easy to strip the threads inside of this 3D printed piece here. But you can see the final picture. Flip this upside down. So I've got the servo here. You do have to grind a little bit off the bottom of the servo horn, just like on pretty much any servo that you use with a SCX10.2 chassis. It'll hit the chassis rail if you don't grind a little bit off the top. This is a Yeah Racing servo, which worked a little bit better because this servo mount actually raises the servo a little bit, and even the Chinese Amazon servos that I usually use, even grinding off the little nub, it still would hit the chassis. So that this Yeah Racing one gives you a little more clearance. So you can see that as the that servo arm turns, it just clears the chassis mount. It'll hit this little plastic piece here too, but it kind of just powers through that if you have a good servo. And so I'm getting full turning ability here. I've got pretty good articulation still, and not a lot of bump steer as you can see, the steering arm, or the panhard, and the whatever this link is called, they're still pretty lined up. I mean, it's not a perfect alignment, but it's better than the alternatives that I could find. I needed something that would allow this panhard mount on this side to be outboard. So you need an outboard panhard mount here, or else you're gonna start hitting the steering linkage. So if I can do this with one hand, apparently I can't do it with one hand, so I'll turn this upside down. And if we steer all the way, you can see that there's no impact. Nothing's hitting anything. Over here, nothing's hitting anything. The stock panhard mount on the axle is fine. There's no impact there, and that seems to work pretty well. So that's what I got. Any questions or comments, go ahead and post them. Bye.